elections are seen as the beginning of a new cycle in China's political year. So after Premier Li Keqiang gave his latest government work report, how will be China's foreign policy look like in 2017? How will US-China relation develop under the new President Donald Trump? And in the Korean Peninsula, where will the current tension lead us? Welcome to this special roundtable discussion of The Point. I'm Li Xin. A rising China at a turning point. A growing economic power in a changing global order. A new leader or an ascending guide? A wave rider or a naughty toddler? A system for defense or a trigger for conflict? A Belt and Road Summit. How will it help the win-win approach to mutual development? A meeting in Xiamen. What wisdom and solutions will China contribute? To insiders and outsiders, what's the best answer? Join me, Li Xin, as together we find out. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has briefed the media on the sidelines of the two sessions. He reviewed the 2016 foreign policy of China, and he also looked into the future, projecting a more confident foreign policy and saying that China will show greater confidence on the international stage. So to have a more diversified perspective and more in-depth analysis, I'm very pleased to be joined by a distinguished panel here. We have Ina Tangen, political and economic affairs author, columnist and commentator; Francesco Sisci, senior researcher from the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University; Rowan Kalik, China correspondent of The Australian. We have also from our Chinese side, Ye Hailing, director of the Center for South Asia Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences; Professor Zhu Chenghu from the National Defense University; and last but not least, Yang Rui, host of Dialogue with Yang Rui on CGTN. So welcome, gentlemen, to this panel discussion. I'm really looking forward. Now, during the two sessions, China has defined its foreign policy or defined itself as a builder of world peace, a contributor of global development, and an upholder of international order. How do you regard the evolution of China's foreign policy? I mean, in the beginning, China was much holding back, right? Slowly, it wanted to do a little bit more. Are we seeing a more active role of China on the international stage?
China has benefited enormously from the existing economic order and political order as well, so we have good reasons to contribute more to the rebuilding and improvement of the existing order instead of replacing it, as some of the newcomers in the United States have long been afraid of. Therefore, there's no reason to question China's peaceful rise. We're going to be not only a beneficiary of the existing order, it's time for us to act more like a major responsible stakeholder.
But one of the issues, Yang Rui, is that China's evolution has been quite different. Its financial and political system is not in complete sync with the Western model. So how China develops this kind of leadership model, if it is in fact a leadership model or a contributing organizing model, it'll be very tricky how it kind of meshes these two different systems.
Is China at the position already to kind of start to talk about changing the international order?
No,
Professor
I don't think so,
Zhu?
because China has benefited a lot from the present international order. I think we would try our efforts to modify a little bit, which are not serving the interests of the international community. But basically speaking, we will continue to follow the order and observe the order, which are useful to China's development in the future.
Basically, China can't hide anyway because of its size and because of expectations from its neighbours and from the world that it will play that sort of role that Yang Rui is talking about. So it can't just sit back. It's got to decide what it does with its weight and its influence.
It's very interesting. We're saying that China is already kind of coming to the center of the world economic stage, right? But in terms of diplomacy, we are slowly coming to the center of that stage. But how we're walking there too is also, are we walking it like that, or are we sneaking towards the center? What do you think?
No, I think it is not sneaking towards the center, is right at the center, especially with this One Belt, One Road initiative, which is developing a new Silk Road. This is a new conception, a new idea, totally revolutionizing the whole order, the old order. So I think this is a new concept, is very useful for the development of the whole world, but I would say it is necessary for China, and is a priority for China, to involve the United States in this process. Why? Because objectively, One Belt, One Road excludes the United States. So if China doesn't make a special effort to include the United States, this One Belt, One Road could cause a lot of problems.
Excuse me, do you think the United States excludes itself from the Belt and Road Initiative?
I don't think this
Taking
is
the idea as an example, we have invited the United States to be part of it, but it has rejected it, and it has rejected TPP.
Okay, I think this is not the point, if it's excluded or not excluded. The point is that if America is not involved in One Belt, One Road, the One Belt, One Road project could fail. This is an objective thing, because America is just too important.
The principle and advocacy of the China has always been and will be to be inclusive instead of exclusive. I mean, this makes a sea difference.
I don't think this is the point.
From the principle that the United States
I'm going to side with Yang Rui on this. The U.S. is not clamoring to be let in, and you cannot force somebody to be part of something not willing.
Okay,
so I don't know exactly what that means.
Okay, what I mean is that it's an objective side. If One Belt, One Road doesn't include the United States, One Belt, One Road is at risk. As simple as that.
Why?
I'm not saying that United States wants to be in or doesn't want to be in. It's an objective fact. If it is cold and it's winter, you don't wear a coat, you're likely to catch a cold. As simple as that.
Mr. Ye, yes, Mr. Ye, please.
He said over and over, we welcome everybody to jump on the wagon. It's open, it's inclusive. I mean, the United States has led the world for 1 century, and it's ready to lead the world for yet another century. China has led the world for centuries, and we always keep the door open to include everybody, right?
Mr. Ye, you wanted to say something from the South Asian perspective, please. Yes.
To be very honest, I think now we're facing a real problem that for the last 30 years, China's problem is always how much we want to change ourselves to adopt the international. We want to reform the international order, but how much? We never adopt the direction and the tendency, the globalization. But now question is that the leader of this round of the globalization has a lot of the negative opinion towards this tendency, I mean Donald Trump. So if this leader is no longer no longer want to be the leader, what's the China's choice? This is our real problem, just like the One Belt One Road. It's not the point for China want to American join or not. This call is in the American side, not in China side. If China want, the question is that if American thought something is competing with American supremacy, although Americans say that we don't want to be the leader, but they still want to hope it's right, but doesn't want to share the responsibility with another country. That's still our problem.
Very naturally, we actually have gone into my second topic, which is US-China relations, because we think that being the two biggest economies in the world, this relationship is really too important. However, we're seeing some, I'm describing it again in the dancing term, okay, the salsa that China and the US does. Since Donald Trump came into power, we have already done some to-ing and fro-ing in our steps on the One China policy, for instance, we have seen. So let's take a closer look at this relationship. What will common interests of the two sides overweigh the disputes that we potentially could have?
I think that you always have tensions between a rising power and a status quo power, and this is inevitable, but we can see from the last few decades how China has benefited greatly from close economic relations with the United States. This is how this relationship has nothing to do with the old Cold War days with the Soviet Union. Some people make comparisons. It's a nonsense because of that. And so the two are closely linked. There are so many Chinese people living in America, quite a lot of Americans living here in China. And so I think the relationship is something new. We haven't seen this rising power, status quo power, locked in so closely together. And mutual benefit must continue, even if Donald Trump, for the time being, doesn't understand that. A lot of other people in America do get it.
But why are people so worried about this relationship at this moment?
I think for China, now since Donald Trump takes the oath to be the president of the United States, we have the problem not only because of the Donald Trump pick up the Taiwan issue to try to deal with China or blackmail with China, but our problem is that we had to take some time to try to take the China-U.S. relation back to the normal state. That means no treaty on tricky, or just like the American, current way Donald Trump want to deal with China, pick up some sensitive issue and try to use the issue to use that as a balance to get something in another perspective. I think in
as
China,
a bargaining chip, you mean?
Let me go back to your
change
question.
the Taiwan issue with a trade or something like this.
Let me
Such
go back
kind
to
of deal is not acceptable.
Let me go back to your question about why people are so concerned on the bilateral relationship between the United States and China. First of all, this is the most important bilateral relationship in the 21st century. Secondly, the United States is the biggest economy, we are the second. And third, none of the major problems on the global scale could be effectively addressed and fixed without the participation or solution from either the United States or China. That makes sense. That makes the difference.
Oh, you're agreeing with Francisco then?
I think that is the point. I think this is the point. I mean, if you have an initiative, if whatever is the initiative, it is the United States or China, and doesn't include the other party, then objectively is a problem. I'm not saying whose fault is if you don't participate or that doesn't participate is ill or sick. But objectively, the two sides have to be together, especially if this initiative, as the case of One Belt, One Road, revolutionize all Eurasian policy, and this is the largest and most important continent in the world. So United States must be in.
Yeah, but the point is, how can the United States be in if, I mean, China is not saying no, but is it more of the problem on the United States that they don't want to join? Or?
If I may,
the problem is the United States the problem is that the United States cannot cross the red line, the one China principle, for example. You cannot toy with the idea of one China principle can be
but on the One Belt, One Road issue, we don't have
this president is not a serious one at the very beginning.
Yeah, but
he's looking more like a president.
But
ever since the speech.
Francisco, I understand your points and things, but the issue is Donald Trump is not America. He's simply the president at this time. And I think in the relationship...
It's not to...
Let me finish.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of the relationship here is, quite frankly, China can slow play this. If by next year at this time, Donald Trump has not, he is finished. Because everybody who's running for Congress or running for the Senate will have to make a decision. Are they going to run with Donald Trump and his inability to get something accomplished, or will they run against him? So I think it's more probable that within a year's time, you're going to see a lot of people defecting to the other side. There are already deep questions about what he has proposed and how he's done it. He's a neophyte.
The first 100 days would be important. The first year of his presidency is important. However, I believe the Congress people will have to grow up with the president himself.
I think that is more a domestic problem, which we will not come to a conclusion anytime soon, especially on this table. But let me ask you this question, Professor Zhu. Now, we know the military spending issue, right? China just released that it wants to increase its military spending by 7%. In contrast, the US president has said that it wants to increase by 10%. In the near future. How is that going to play into China-US relations?
I think this is the first time that China increased its military expenditure by 7%, and the second year less than 10% since 1996.
First of all, explain to us, why is China slowing down its military spending?
A lot
increase?
of reasons. Number one, I think China needs money everywhere, and not only in China but also in outside of China because of the China huge investment outside. Second, I think we are facing no imminent war threat in the near future. This is very important position. Third one is that the security environment on China's periphery is improving instead of deteriorating.
Could that be a misjudgment? I mean, what we're seeing around China is kind of opposite what you have just described.
So in the South China Sea, things are calming to an extent. You have Philippines
switching
going one way,
yes.
and then Vietnam, a deal made with Beijing quite recently. So that's to an extent in South China Sea you can see that. But of course, North Korea remains, as we're speaking now, it's bubbling along as we don't know where that's going to go.
But I don't think North Koreans will attack China or will launch a war against China. That's impossible.
No.
And furthermore, if we look at those countries on China's periphery, we have established a very constructive relationship with them. That's a very, very important progress in China's diplomacy, especially its diplomacy with those countries on China's periphery. So
and China is targeting, I think, General, you would know this better than me, but I think China is targeting its military spend a little better, isn't it? Because it's reducing 300,000 people out of the military personnel, so it can equip the remaining 2 million better and continue modernization, despite the apparent fall in the amount.
This is one of the important reasons. Another one is that, in the past we have invested in the military quite heavily, and because of this we have started and established a very, very good basis for the defense industry and the research, and those projects researched and which are still in the storage.
Welcome back to this special roundtable discussion on The Point, and we're talking about some of the most thorniest issues on China's foreign diplomatic front for 2017. Now, we are going to turn to the Korean Peninsula, where the controversy surrounding one anti-missile system, the THAAD, has been heating up. The DPRK has just filed 4 missiles, it says, aimed at kind of training its forces to see whether it can strike U.S. forces based in Japan. And more news coming out. For instance, the DPRK government has just decided to not let Malaysian nationals leave the country in the latest step of a vicious tit-for-tat cycle in that peninsula. So where is the current situation leading? Can there be any break in that deadlock, gentlemen? Where is this situation going? What are you predicting for the next step?
My concern is that China gives the impression sometimes that it's less concerned about a nuclear-armed North Korea whose leader appears to organize assassinations than it is about a South Korea which is enlisting a missile defense system. Now, I don't know that I've read quite a lot about the THAAD system, whether it can look deep into China, but it's primarily a defensive system. So it seems to me there's some imbalance in the way
I'm
China
afraid.
So there's a gentleman, after all the explanation we've been trying to do on CGTN, he still doesn't get why China is so opposed to the THAAD.
The most fundamental root cause behind the latest escalation of tensions on the Korean Peninsula, I'm afraid, is China always believes that it is between the DPRK and the United States that this problem has been brought to light. Either the nuclear capability or the hostility across the 38th parallel, the demilitarized zone. It is the United States and the DPRK. These two sides should talk to each other, not China. China take the United States as our biggest threat in terms of the missile shield program. It does not protect the Seoul capital city, which is under the artillery fire within 60 kilometers.
Mr. Ye, you wanted to say
your point,
okay,
but I'm going to say that China does have a responsibility here. There is great things at stake for China. If a nuclear-armed DPRK will lead to a nuclear arms race throughout Southeast Asia, it will only be a matter of hours before South Korea and Japan, who both have the capabilities, assemble whatever they need to do and have all the missiles to do this. I think there's more at stake here. In terms of identifying the U.S. and things, there are other parties to this. The main issue is what happens to the Korean Peninsula. Will it be reunified? Will American troops be asked to leave? Can it be created as a neutral zone with the agreement of Russia, China, U.S., and perhaps South Korea? I do agree with Ryan that this is a failed state in DPRK, that they have failed to their own people. And I think there are concerns that China has echoed on this. The fact that you cut away 1/3 of their foreign reserves by saying we're not buying any more coal for you is a very strong indication that China does not approve.
Yeah.
We don't
Professor
have any comment on the domestic situation of the DPRK because even President Donald Trump mentioned that every country has the right to choose their own path. This not came from the Speaker of the Chinese Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. It came from White House. But our question is that now we are talking about the responsibility. It seems that the U.S. and his alliance, to be specified, South Korea and Japan, has the responsibility to put the military pressure on DPRK. And China has the responsibility to talk to DPRK, ask them to soften their position and make some compromise. This something, it won't happen, it doesn't work. For China, it's a shared responsibility. Find a way, provide essential security insurance for the DPRK and create a better dialogue circumstance. For China right now, what we see, there's a lot of the military drill. There's a deployment of the SAB. In this context, how we can talk to DPRK, you should give up your own project. Be rational. I'm talking about the legal action adopted by the DPRK to launch their missile. But I'm talking about the rational actions, what we should together. But now the question is that it seems that Americans is only China has the responsibility to control the DPRK.
While they are making it worse and worse.
I would like to add a few points. Of course, on Korean Peninsula, there are too many issues. On the nuclear issue, I think China is the only country which is sincerely hoping to address the issue. Because if you look at history, there are opportunities of hope, or windows of opportunity.
And the testing is happening quite close to the Chinese border.
So another one, China's approach is different from the Western countries. You advocate the economic sanctions, military intimidation, and so on. But do them work? Do they work? History proves that it doesn't work. And I believe that this negotiation is most important at the present moment. The longer the negotiation is postponed, the more advanced the technologies of the DPRK will be. Their nuclear technologies as well as the missile technologies, that they will come. They can deliver the warheads onto the continent of America. This is my prediction.
They've shot them from submarines.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
We saw some progress with the six-party talk.
Yeah.
What should be done to restart this six-party talk, which has been going nowhere for the past 5 years, as far as I know?
Yeah, we can put forward some preconditions to DPRK, but these conditions cannot be too strict, too demanding. Because if we put forward this sort of request or the preconditions to North Korea, I don't think they will take part in the six-party talks. We will have to persuade the Koreans to come back to the negotiation table. Now, I think they are willing. So if the United States are willing to sit down there, this is a very good opportunity for us.
I think one of the answers must be, of course, if DPRK is persuaded to reform itself economically in the way that China did, and then that type of opening will give it a real incentive to make sure there's peace, because its own people will have benefited from considerable material advance.
So the present
How
sanctions
that happens is a very interesting, because the South Koreans tried this and it kind of didn't go far. So
the
it's very
question is that
difficult.
now currently the United States precondition is that the DPRK had to make the commitment to suspend or even cancel all the nuclear project and make the commitment and no any nuclear test. If there is such kind of the precondition will be fulfilled by the DPRK, I even doubt whether at that time whether it's necessary for America to talk to the DPRK, because they already reached their target.
Yeah, given the kind of atmosphere, I don't think it's realistic to expect the negotiations to restart anytime soon. I mean,
if I may, another question. I mean, what I found interesting is that over the past year, previously, South Korea and China had been, for the past 10 years, more in line than, say, South Korea and America. But over the past 1 year, South Korea has realigned itself with America. What did happen? Why did the South Korean lose heart with the Chinese? Because this is what happened. And how can China reestablish this very important link? Because once China has the heart of the South Koreans, maybe this whole process could...
I think this modification of the policy of South Korea stems from the miscalculation of China's policy. So this is, I believe, is very important. But the deployment of THAAD really hurts the interest of China, because the credibility of China's strategic forces are reduced if THAAD is deployed. The Americans always argue THAAD is intended to protect South Korea. To be very frank, about 60% of the assets of South Korea is concentrated in Seoul, but Seoul could not be protected by THAAD system.
No, it cannot be protected by
so
THAAD.
a lot of people are saying
be
actually the THAAD
yeah.
is to protect the U.S. bases, U.S. forces based in the ROK, but we're not going to go into further those details. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have to leave it there because of time constraint. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you have been watching a special roundtable discussion here on The Point. Again, my last point, you never go away without it. Now, many would argue that the election of Donald Trump in January and the rise of right-wing in Europe was a predictable symptom of the fact that around the world, people are feeling disenfranchised and have lost their ability to be heard. The fallout has been that the world as a whole is having to re-examine its policies and find new ways to tackle global issues. The world order is changing, and 2017 might be a watershed year in many issues. And my observation, and that is also the observation of many people, is that this is the first time in 70 years where the world order might be changed without a shot being fired. And as the saying goes, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way, but in this new world order, it has to be everybody's way. Thank you very much for watching The Point with me, Liu Xing. See you next time at the same place.